Good morning, Mrs. Jones class.
Good morning, kids. Talofa.
This is Mr. Oli. He is Seth's dad. He's from the island of
Samoa.
Samoa is a group of islands in the Pacific Ocean.
You know where Samoa is? It's in the South Pacific, below Hawaii, close to Australia and New Zealand.
Today we're going to be reading a folk tale from this island where Seth's dad lives. It's called Tasi's Gift, A Tale of Samoa by Tamara Montgomery, illustrated by Joseph D. Dodd. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean are the islands of Samoa. On one island called
Upolu
lived an old man. He was known as Grandfather Tasi, and he was the most famous bullmaker in all of Samoa. Many things made him happy. Waking up to the morning songs of seabirds soaring offshore, watching flying foxes leave the trees at dusk, and counting the stars in the dark Polynesian sky. What do you think flying foxes are? They come out at dusk. What made Grandfather Tasi happiest were the visits of his granddaughter Tuala. One day, when Tuala came to see him, he said,
Today is an important day. Today we must go to the rainforest to cut the ifilele tree to make a beautiful bow for the Matai, the new chief of our village.
After packing lunches of fish and coconut, Grandfather Tasi and Tuala left for the rainforest. When they passed through the village, families were preparing for a Fia celebration. Pandunu's leaves were being dried for weaving fine mats. Mulberry tree bark was being pounded for
Siapo
cloth. Coconuts were being husked to make drinking cups. Everyone called out,
Talofa. You know what Talofa means? Means hello.
It was an exciting time. When they arrived at the rainforest, Grandfather Tasi said, We
must find the ifilele tree with the biggest trunk.
Together they searched and searched. Suddenly Tuala pointed excitedly, Look, in the ferns! There was the biggest ifilele tree Grandfather Tasi had ever seen.
It will make a fine bow,
he said, and gripped his axe with both hands. Tuala watched as chop! Away flew the flying foxes and seabirds. Away crawled the singing snails and rhinoceros beetles. Away ran the rats and geckos. Away scurried the millipedes and centipedes. Crash! Down came the tree. Tuala felt sad the animals were losing their homes in the big tree, but she knew they would find new places to live in other ifilele trees. Sometimes she picked up geckos and millipedes. She liked the tingly feeling when they curled in her hand and crawled through her fingers. She never hurt the animals, for Grandfather Tasi had taught her that all living things were her friends. After cutting a big piece of the tree with his axe, Grandfather Tasi started to carve. While he shaped the bowl, he and Tuala sang songs and shared the legends of their village. Grandfather Tasi carved all day. That night, Tuala made a bed of fern leaves. She fell asleep listening to the music of the rainforest, the clicking of the crickets, the chirping of the birds, and the rustling of little beetle feet moving through the leaves. While she slept, Grandfather Tasi carved. When there were more stars in the night sky than he could count, he said,
Now I am finished. I will bury the bowl in the mud so the wood will change color.
when he picked up his little sleeping Tuala and carried her out of the rainforest and back home to the village. For 1 month, Grandfather Tasi and Tuala went to the edge of the rainforest to count the phases of the moon. Do you know the phases of the moon? When 1 full moon had passed, Grandfather Tasi said, "Now we can return." Well, Grandfather Tasi said,
"Now we can return to the mud pond."
All the animals watched as Grandfather Tasi and Tuala dug the bowl out of the mud. "Look how dark it is," said Tuala. Grandfather Tasi and Tuala left, carrying the bowl. When they arrived home, they placed it in the beach Faaoli.
You know what a Faaoli is? It's a hot house. That's where the Samoan people live.
It's like a hut on the beach. It was the biggest bowl Tasi had ever carved. He studied it carefully from top to bottom, inside and out. The bowl was big and beautiful, but it was also very plain. Tuala saw that Grandfather Tasi was worried. "What is the matter?" she asked.
"This bowl must be special,"
he answered.
"It must be a bowl like no other."
Tuala watched Grandfather Tasi studying the bowl. "Maybe you will know what to do tomorrow," she said.
"Maybe,"
he replied. Then he covered the bowl with siapau cloth to protect it from the salt air. That night, as Grandfather Tasi and Tuala slept, animals big and small, from land, sea, and sky, crept quietly under the cloth. They had never seen a bowl so big. They had never seen Tasi the bull carver so worried. Get him crawling under the cloth. The animals liked Grandfather Tasi and remembered how kind he was to them. When he went fishing, he left his extra fish on the sand for the seabirds. When he gathered fruit from the trees, he left some hanging for the flying foxes. He never stepped on centipedes or tried to catch beetles. He taught his granddaughter to respect the animals. He helped her mimic the song of the seabirds and put the sea stars in deep water during low tide. Tonight would be the animals' turn to give back to the great bull carver. Under the siapau cloth, centipedes slithered around the bowl, scoring little scratches in the dark wood. Beetles etched lines with their rhinoceros horns. Flying foxes, terns, and sandpipers notched the bowl with their feet. Snails and sea stars left the reef to engrave their own designs into the wood. As the shadows of the moon changed, the bowl did too. Soon, everything was covered in the golden glow of morning. All was quiet inside the Faaoli. No one was there. Not a bird, not a beetle, not a bat. Only a bowl. A very special bowl. See it there inside the Faaoli? That's what a Faaoli looks like. A hut. Tuala was awakened by the distant song of the villagers. She ran to her grandfather. "Wake up," she said. "Today is the Fia. Do you remember what a Fia is?" "A celebration." Grandfather Tasi opened his eyes but was not excited. "What is the matter, Grandfather?" Tuala asked.
"I could not think of... Today, I must present my bowl,"
Tasi said.
"I could not think of a way to make it beautiful enough for the chief."
Tuala did not know what to say.
"I would have to present it the way it is,"
Grandfather Tasi said. He put on his best lava, and together they walked to the Faaoli. "What's a lava, Mr. Oatley?"
Lava is a wraparound that men and women of Samoan and the Pacific use
What do they use it for?
to wear around everywhere
Like his clothing, right?
as a clothing.
Yeah. So it looks almost like a skirt, but both men and women wear it. When they reached the Faaoli, Grandfather Tasi lifted the siapau cloth. He and Tuala stared in surprise. Before them was the most beautiful bowl in all of Samoa. Tuala looked closely. Was it her imagination, or did she see carved into the bowl the many feet of the centipede, the trail of the snail, the points of the sea star, and the footprints of the seabirds and flying foxes? Tuala never knew how it happened that night before the Fia, but from that day on, Tasi, the great bowl carver, always carved the patterns given to him by his little friends.
Tofa. You know what a tofa is? It means goodbye.
Goodbye for now, little friends. And this is a bowl that's also from Samoa. See the carvings on the side? What do you think those carvings look like? Do you think that this bowl carver may have imitated some of the carvings of the little animals and bugs from our story? I wonder.